Dallas Cowboys fans want to win on Sunday. Washington Commanders fans want draft positioning, but they might also want to win because it's Dallas Cowboys. Who's going to get it? We'll tell you right now on this crossover episode of Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, sports fans? Welcome to the crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Cowboys, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making either of us your first listens or your first views today and every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe to one or both shows for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. I'm David Harris, and he's Marcus Mosier. I'm covering the Commanders. Marcus is covering the Cowboys. And we are here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. As always, we appreciate the everydayers for coming through on a continued basis like you do. This crossover Thursday episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. In this week's crossover, we're doing it like we do most of our crossovers. We're going to talk about what has to happen for the Dallas Cowboys to cover the spread, for the Washington Commanders to upset the 13.5-point spread that FanDuel currently has the Cowboys winning by, the matchups that are going to go into this weekend's contest, and we're starting off with the biggest stories surrounding each team. So, Marcus, one of our seasons is about to come to an end. I've already started some draft prep. I'm getting my Senior Bowl plans put into place, and you're getting ready for a postseason trip. So, what is the biggest story going on for the Dallas Cowboys?
By the way, I'm also getting ready for the Senior Bowl, which is so much fun. We're like 2-3 weeks away. Can't wait for that. No, it's for the Cowboys. It's locking down this number 2 seed. I think for the last month or so, Cowboy fans have kind of thought, they're probably going to be the 5 seed, outside chance they can win the division. But now that the Eagles have slipped up and lost to the Cardinals, all the Cowboys have to do to be the number 2 seed and win the NFC East is beat the Washington Commanders on the road. I think that's easier said than done. We'll get into the spread and stuff, but this is a road game. Cowboys have not been very good on the road this year. I believe they only have 3 road wins all season long. You're going on the road against the divisional opponent, and you and I were just chatting about the weather going into this game. Could be very likely going to be cold, could be rainy, could be snowy. The Cowboys, I'm not sure, are built to play that style of football. So can you go on the road in a game that you absolutely need against a team that's playing for nothing other than draft picks and beat them? We'll get into predictions and all that kind of stuff later, but this is a huge game for Dallas and their Super Bowl chances because, David, like if you're the number 2 seed, that means theoretically at least 2 games at home, potentially 3. You avoid playing the 49ers in the second round should you get past round 1. It just makes things so much cleaner for the Cowboys to reach the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And, for the Washington Commanders side of things, the biggest story going on around the team is draft position. It's the future. It's the future of this team. Like, that's the unfortunate situation that we're in here in week 18 of this season. There's no playoff opportunity. There's no playoff contention. There's really not even a whole lot of confidence in what is currently going on inside the locker room and inside the organization for the future. There's an expectation that come Black Monday, there's going to be a clean sweep of this organization, and most, if not everybody, is going to be let go. I think the only one who's probably safe from being fired on Monday is assistant head coach, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. And I think there's 2 parts to that whole thing. One part of that is he's likely to get an interview opportunity with the Washington Commanders for what's going to be their vacant head coaching position. But also, even if the Washington Commanders themselves, Josh Harris, new managing partner, doesn't want to hire him, there's a possibility that he gets at least interviews for other head coaching opportunities. If he gets hired as a head coach somewhere else, you get draft capital. So you're not going to fire him, because if you fire him and he gets hired as a head coach, you get nothing. So you're going to at least hold on to him, give him his opportunity to interview with the organization, give him his opportunity to potentially find employment elsewhere. And maybe you can get a little bit of a benefit from what has really been a disastrous season. But inside the locker room, nobody cares about draft position. Nobody cares about where Caleb Williams may or may not go home to the DMV this offseason or any of these other things. They are out there to play for each other. They're out there to play for pride. And I think that when you watch this Washington Commanders team, that is one thing at least that you can say about every single man that's been on the field. And there have been a lot of injuries. So there have been a lot of dudes rotating in and off or on and off the field. And that is that they're all fighting to the end. And that's a very small consolation prize for a fan base that has been dying for a franchise quarterback, winning football, playoff appearance, all this stuff. But that is the truth inside the locker room. At least these guys are going to go down fighting. Whoever is dressed on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys, they're going to scrap. Ron Rivera talked about it on Tuesday in our latest press conference with him. This is a classic rivalry. Like this is one of those sports rivalries. It's Yankees, Red Sox, it's Buckeyes, Wolverines, like Cowboys and Washington. Unfortunately, now that's how we have to talk about it. But that rivalry is massive, and to be a part of that, and that's kind of the message that Ron Rivera is delivering, is being a part of that rivalry is a privilege. It's something that needs to be taken seriously, something that needs to be kind of revered if you get the opportunity to do that. And that's exactly what these guys are going to do. They're going out there looking to put a whooping on the Dallas Cowboys. And if there's bad weather, Marcus, that you're right, that does play into the hands of the Washington Commanders, who, there's your next biggest storyline for this game, have one of the best yards per carry averages in the National Football League, yet one of the worst yards per game averages in the National Football League in rushing, because Eric Bieniemy is a self-admitted sellout as a running back, does not want to run the ball. Bad weather pretty much means you have to run the ball.
You have to. I got a question really quickly for you. So you mentioned that it's going to be likely a clean slate. Ron Rivera is going to be gone. Mm. I wonder how the front office handles this week, because they have some guys that are banged up and that could potentially play in this game. Do you just tell them hey, Andrew Wiley, we don't need you to rush back for week 18, a meaningless week 18. We want you to be healthy going into the offseason. They know the value of this number 2 pick, because I believe that's where Washington is slated to draft right now, assuming they don't win on Sunday. There's just different goals from the front office and the coaching staff. Ron Rivera doesn't care about the number 2 pick because he's not going to be here to make it. So how is that going to weigh out? Do you think the front office is going to tell some of these guys that, hey, just stay healthy this week and let's get to the offseason?
I don't think they necessarily will. I think that Josh Harris and especially Magic Johnson, when he came in, and, Magic is a minority owner and he's one of the minorityist of the minority owners. But let's be honest, he brings the most social clout, right? He's the most recognizable face in this group. So obviously everybody wants to hear from him. And he's talked about nothing but trying to put together a winner. He didn't get into the NFL to just make money. Everybody makes money in the NFL. It doesn't matter what team you own. But he got into the NFL because he wants to win. He wants to compete. He wants to win. Josh Harris is a fan of this franchise from the days that he grew up. He shared stories with us of being a kid walking up to RFK Stadium, just in awe of what was going on inside there during those time periods. So he's a fan of this franchise. So I think Ron Rivera, they understand that this rivalry is important no matter what the records are. So they're going to want to win. Plus, I just feel as new ownership, that's not the pace you want to set for your new franchise. On top of that, Ron Rivera was actually we've talked to Ron Rivera about that kind of thing. He's kind of basically let us know that if that conversation was going on inside the building to him, that he wouldn't be around anymore. That's not something that he's going to stand for. And for everything, maybe Ron Rivera isn't as an NFL coach and all these other things, I do believe him to be a man of integrity. So I think that's something that you could basically hang your hat on. Now, as far as, players coming back, he's pretty much already let us know that the guys that we've seen out for the last, couple weeks or so are probably going to remain out. So I think Andrew Wiley, your right tackle, probably still misses this game. Charles Leno Jr. probably still misses this game. Nick Gates is going to be your starting center, and your secondary is going to continue to be a rotation of mostly backup players, and then first and second round draft picks this year in Cam Curl, who's on an expiring contract. The thing,
What about Fuller playing in the slot?
Yeah, I don't expect Kendall Fuller. The way that I'm entering this week, and we've got to see the early injury reports. The way I'm entering this week is anybody that didn't play last weekend, I don't expect them to play this weekend. And that actually is kind of to your point, because if we go to last year, Taylor Heineke was supposed to start this Cowboys game, very same week, very same playoff situation for the Washington Commanders. And he basically went to Ron Rivera and said, hey, Sam deserves an opportunity to get the full game. So that's what they did. That's the story. I'm going to tell you right now, my internal belief is Taylor Heineke basically went to Ron Rivera and said, hey, dude, my contract expires after this game. I don't know if you're bringing me back. I'm not going out there for half a game, maybe getting injured. I need to make sure I get paid this offseason. Put the guy you've already got under contract in the game and give him the opportunity. That's what they did. So this team is not averse to protecting people's futures on top of it.
And that plays a big part of this too. I think Cowboy fans would be very happy if Andrew Wiley and Fuller and Leno didn't play, because it just gives them a little bit easier path to winning this game. But the Commanders also have to protect their franchise and protect their future assets. There's no reason to play Andrew Wiley if he's only 50% healthy in a game that doesn't matter. So just kind of keep an eye on the injury reports as we get further along in the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Injury reports are going to be interesting. And I mean, there were a couple of guys that weren't on the injury reports all week, and then on Friday they were declared out for the game. So it's an interesting time of year, regardless. But we're going to talk about some of these matchups, some of these players who may be on the field, may not be on the field, and how that's going to determine who wins this weekend's game. Coming up next on this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Cowboys, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we always get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organize one part of your space and you want to tackle another one, or maybe you're taking supplements every morning and now you want to actually eat breakfast on top of it, or improve your workout program on top of what you're already doing. Well, therapy will help you find your strengths, appreciate your strengths, so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that will actually stick and help you build upon the success you've already had. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you switch therapists anytime you need to for no additional charge. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thanks again for making Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders your first listens, your first views today and every day. Thanks as always for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Don't forget, Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Biggest matchups, most important players in this one. Marcus, like you mentioned, the Washington Commanders expected to be without a solid roster of guys that even for a losing team are still pretty important players. Like you mentioned, Kendall Fuller is a guy that I don't expect personally to be on the field this weekend. But what are the biggest matchups you're looking at for this Dallas Cowboys team coming into the weekend?
I just look at the best players for Washington. It's Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. And I know they haven't had the seasons that many people were anticipating, but they're still really good players. And Cowboys offensive line is a little bit beat up in this game. And we talked about the weather. You're going to have to be able to run the ball. Cowboys left guard Tyler Smith suffered a foot injury last week. I don't anticipate that he's going to play this week. I know there's been some talk that he may be able to play through the foot injury. I think the smart bet is for the Cowboys to give him the week off and then hope that he's better by the time the playoffs come, which means it's probably going to be TJ Bass, an undrafted free agent from Oregon, playing left guard. And Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are really, really good, and they can mess up your run game. So I'm curious to see how the undrafted free agent does against these two Pro Bowl defensive tackles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially, like you said, if they have a UDFA out there, that's going to be obviously a spot that the Washington Commanders defense want to hone in on. And oddly enough, this defense has actually played fairly, I don't want to say fairly well, but at least better. They've only given up 30 points in one game in the last few weeks. And that's something they were doing on a very regular basis before Thanksgiving, the last time the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders met, in the game that ultimately led to Jack Del Rio's dismissal. So his defense has actually been playing improved ball. I think when you couple it with the offensive struggles, you probably give the defense a little bit of a bye for some of those points that are being scored, because any defense that spends as much time on the field as they have lately is going to start giving up points. That's just the nature of the beast, and fatigue and all that stuff is going to set in. I think that we're going to stick on the defensive side of the ball for my biggest matchup. And I'm looking at Emmanuel Forbes, the first round draft pick. And again, he's been dealing with an elbow injury, and who knows, like you said, maybe they decide to shut him down and say, you know what, let's worry about our future more than we're worried about our today. And he's not even going to play. So again, keep an eye on those injury reports, but I'm going to go into this conversation thinking that he's going to get burned here in this last matchup. And if you're Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, anytime you do pass the ball, again, weather permitting, I think you have to look at number 13. I think you're being irresponsible as a quarterback, as an offensive play caller, coordinator, receiver, tandem, whatever you want to call it, if you're not, because he's just proven this season that he is very much in the infancy of his NFL development. And while he's certainly developing and continuing to try to show that growth, anytime you can get a guy like, say, CeeDee Lamb one-on-one with a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, I think you're going to test that matchup as much as possible. And we'll see what happens there. But on the offensive side of things, Marcus, I'm looking at Terry McLaurin because Terry McLaurin is trying to do something that no Washington receiver has ever done with another 1,000-yard season this year. He will have the most consecutive. And I think he only needs 54 yards on the number right in front of me, but I want to say it's 54 yards. And that kind of begs the question. I've actually kind of internally thought about this, so it's funny that you bring it up. If Terry McLaurin gets that 55th yard, do they shut him down? Because I mean, number 17, like he's your golden goose. You know what I mean? Like he's the guy that, even in the struggles and all that stuff, you're always okay. Let's look to Terry to help us dig out of this hole. Let's look to Terry to help us in this comeback. Let's look to Terry to secure this victory. Terry McLaurin is kind of that do-it-all guy for the Washington Commanders. So he gets that 55th yard, you might just call it a season.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin is somebody who has historically played pretty well against the Cowboys whenever he's not going up against Trayvon Diggs. So that matchup always makes me a little bit nervous. But on the other side, Deron Bland, we remember the last time these two teams played, Deron Bland had a pick six in the second half of that game. If the weather's kind of crappy and the footing's not great, how often is Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett going to want to challenge Bland on the outside? And that leads me to my other matchup. It's whatever quarterback against this Cowboys pass rush. You mentioned the offensive line injuries. Pretty good chance, I would say, that both Commanders tackles are out of this one. That's probably bad news against DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. So does Ron Rivera go with Sam Howell, who has a little bit more mobility, or does he go with somebody like Jacoby Brissett, who can stand in the pocket and make throws? I'm curious as to who you believe is going to start, because we know last week Brissett was slated to start, didn't start because of the injury. What do you think is going to happen?
And that's the tricky part, right? Because as people are watching this crossover Thursday episode, there is going to be a quarterback that is identified to be the starter. And I believe truly that if Jacoby Brissett is healthy, that he's the starting quarterback. Because again, you go back to the whole reasoning behind benching Sam Howell fully in the first place. It's not just that he was playing poorly, it's why he was playing poorly. This is a young quarterback who's getting out of the pocket with no pressure. You know what I mean? He's throwing the ball with inaccuracy when he's really got nobody near him to cause him to throw the ball with inaccuracy. To put it bluntly, he's seeing ghosts, right? A phrase that has been around NFL quarterback circles for decades, but Sam Darnold, I think, really made the most popular in public circles while he was still with the New York Jets, and now everybody knows what it means. But that's really what's happening, is he's seeing ghosts. He's feeling the pressure before the pressure is really there, and that's something that we always say in football as well. Pressure is cumulative, and it's not just inside one game. It's all season long. So when you got a quarterback that's been hit as much as Sam has and pressure as much as Sam has, and some of that is on him, some of it's on the offensive line, some of it's on play calling. Everybody's got a piece of the pie to share in that. You are bound to eventually get to this point where you have a young quarterback that simply his internal alarms go off before they really actually need to. And that's what you see on the film when you turn on Sam.
What's the point of starting Jacoby Brissett in week 18 when Sam Howell started the whole season? Why not just give Sam Howell the last start and then just kind of reevaluate things this offseason? I guess I'm confused as what's the benefit for Brissett and what's the benefit for the Commanders to have him start this week?
Yeah, so the benefit really is for Sam and potentially the Commanders organization, if you so believe there's a future there. And that's a whole other layered conversation of how Josh Harris is going to pursue this hiring process. Like if Josh Harris comes into this thing saying, "Hey, Sam is our 2024 quarterback. What is your plan to make that work?" And that's how I'm going to hire. Or, okay, what's your plan as you see our team? Quarterback irrelevant. That's a whole different thing. But for Ron Rivera, as much as we don't think coaches do this, and I think was it Mike Fisher from the St. Louis or Los Angeles Rams? It was Coach Fisher, Jeff Fisher. It was like 2 years later. He's like, a lot of those guys that won the Super Bowl were on my roster, guys, so I helped build that. That's how these guys think. Like that's part of your legacy. So if 3 years from now the Washington Commanders are winning NFC East Division titles and going to the playoffs with Sam Howell as the quarterback, Ron Rivera is going to hang his hat on that Howell hook and say, I put that guy in place. So that's really where the benefit comes in for Sam Howell. Like his development trajectory has just bottomed out. Like it's just down to the floor and about as deep as you can get. And honestly, I don't know that there's any positives to be taken from the rest of this season. I think putting him out there, you're at a much greater likelihood of stacking more negative experiences than you are putting some positives on top of those negatives. And that's why the benefit to pull Sam Howell is there. The benefit for Jacoby Brissett, as far as I'm concerned, the benefit that he could get from this season is already there. The near comeback win against the Rams, the near comeback win against the New York Jets, the performances that he's been able to put on with this offense that's generally underperformed. Other NFL teams are seeing that. So if he wants the opportunity to go be a bridge quarterback somewhere, he's already got that tape. So it's really not about benefiting Jacoby as much as it is about protecting Sam and potentially the future of the organization if they decide to stick with Sam next year as their starting quarterback. And I think that's why they do it. But again, hamstring injuries, man. I mean, Jacoby, just like last week, he'd be the starter Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then not the starter on Sunday.
Well, and that's the other thing is he's already not very mobile to begin with. I mean, he's fantastic at the quarterback sneaks, but he's a quarterback that just doesn't really get outside the pocket. If he's got a hamstring injury that's limiting him at all, especially with that offensive line that could be without several starters, are you putting him in harm's way kind of going into this game? Be interesting to see what Ron Rivera decides.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting storyline to watch as we get towards the weekend. What has to happen for the Dallas Cowboys to prevent the upset? What's got to happen for the Commanders to ruin the Cowboys party? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. No, LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place for you to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. And that's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that they may not have time or resources to hire. So thankfully, they've made the process intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wrapping up this crossover Thursday episode, Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders. And Marcus, I checked while the ad message was running there. And as of right now, we still don't have any leaks on which quarterback is going to be. So at the time of this recording, we're not 100% sure. But like I said, I think if Jacoby is healthy, and that's a relative term, like you just pointed out, he does play. If not, then I do believe they'll start Sam Howell. Although to me, and this is a little bit of a hot take that I've actually floated past some other media members, and they're like, "Bro, you're crazy." I was like, "I know I'm crazy, but that's okay." I like to think outside the box. If you're really trying to protect Sam Howell, Jake Fromm is a veteran. I'm not saying.
We'll take that. Cowboy fans would love to see Jake Fromm.
Yeah, I like Jake Fromm. I do. So I'm not trying to be mean and be like, "Hey, bro, good luck out there with two backup tackles."
Cowboy fans will be happy with
Lucas
that.
actually played pretty well in the time that he's had as well. Trent Scott, not as much. So that's probably where you're more worried at the right tackle spot than anything else. But just stand behind Sam Cosmi. Sam Cosmi's been, Pro Bowl caliber this year. I don't know that he'll get that kind of recognition because of what the team is going through. But just stand behind Sam and you'll be all right, Jake.
Yeah.
But what has to go right, Mark, is the Cowboys are favored by 13.5 on FanDuel. Same spread that the 49ers had last weekend. What has to go right for the Dallas Cowboys, or what can't they have go wrong maybe to prevent the Commanders' upset?
The Cowboys have only played one semi-bad weather game this year, and that was when in Buffalo, and it really wasn't all that bad of weather. There was a light mist, it was cold, it was a little bit windy, and they got run all over in that game. That's what can't happen in this one. They've got to be able to stop the run, and I think regardless of who is at quarterback for the Commanders, you're going to see them try to run the ball on Dallas, and the Cowboys can't afford to let the Commanders just rip off long runs, consistently be ahead of the chains. The way the Cowboys win this game is they get the Commanders in third and long, where they have to throw the ball and they have to take these true pass sets with the backup tackles. That's how the Cowboys win this game. They get an early lead. They make this a passing game for the Commanders. But the longer Washington can hang around because of the run game, the better chance they will have at stealing this game at home. I expect the Cowboys to try to load the box early to force the Commanders to try to throw the ball down the field, because they know getting run on is probably going to be what ends up making them lose this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for the Washington Commanders to pull off the upset, it's playing clean football. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of stealing that from Jacoby Brissett while he was preparing to start against the 49ers last week. That's what he kept preaching, is play clean, play clean, play clean. And, the most frustrating thing, I think, for Commanders fans watching this team this season is that this roster is not devoid of talent. You know what I mean? Like, this team actually has ability. Like, they put up 30 plus points as Philadelphia Eagles twice. And this is the 10-1 on their way to 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles, not the the 1-5 or so Philadelphia Eagles that we've been seeing lately. This is before all the wheels kind of started to come off of that team. And, we've seen this team put up a good amount of points. We've seen this team give up a good amount of points, but we've also seen this team just completely shoot themselves in the foot. And more often than not, when they're losing games, it's not typically a situation where both teams play clean football. One team is just better than the other. And that's really what it boils down to. You see drop passes when the quarterback is accurate, when the receivers aren't dropping passes, the quarterback's inaccurate or getting sacked. And when none of those things are happening, they're turning the ball over. So playing clean football is really kind of the key to this whole thing. The cleanest players they've had on the field all season long, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Brian Robinson Jr. Rely on those three guys in this game. And that is your blueprint to defeating the Dallas Cowboys. On the defensive side of things, you just go right back to that San Francisco 49ers game. If you can give up less than 8 explosive plays in a game, then I think you can truly stay within striking range of most NFL offenses. Last weekend, the Niners, they gave up exactly 8. And when you go back to the first half, clean football from the Washington Commanders offense, not perfect, but clean football. They're only down 3 entering the locker room. Come out in the second half, unclean football from the offense. The defense has to give up a little bit more because they're on the field too long, and you end up with a double-digit loss. So I think really, as boring as that sounds, that's really the key to this whole thing. Play clean, and you should be competitive in this matchup, really any matchup, but especially this one this weekend.
And I'll just say for the Cowboys, it's all about starting fast. When they get early leads and they go down on the first drive and score points, they're generally pretty good. They're just one of these teams that has a snowball effect. Once they build some confidence, they can get a lead. The defense starts to play better. The offense plays with more confidence. They're really hard to beat. Where they get in trouble is when things don't exactly go to plan, and all of a sudden you're down 6 points going into halftime. Or, you're down 9 points in the third quarter. Can you overcome that? They're just really not built to play that style of football. And I know that seems weird for a team that might be the number 2 seed in the NFC, but this just feels like a game to me, David, where if the Cowboys score touchdowns on the first 2 drives, and it's 14-0, I don't want to say that Washington's going to lay down, but if you can flip that compared to the other side where, hey, it's a tie game going into halftime, you're going to keep Washington alive, and they're going to be fighting really hard to get this last win of the season. If you're a Cowboy fan, what you would love to see is them bury this Commanders team early, maybe rest some guys in the third and fourth quarter. Do not let the Commanders hang around any longer than they need to.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see if the Commanders do something to prevent the Dallas Cowboys from knowing what's going on in the Eagles-Giants matchup at the same time. But again, like you mentioned,
I think it'd be better for Dallas.
Cowboys,
to be honest, it might be better for the Cowboys. Yeah.
The Cowboys should be worried about it anyway. Worried about winning your matchup. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That actually might be better for. I don't know if the Eagles are winning. Maybe start throwing some highlights on the Jumbotron and FedEx and just kind of show hey, look what the Eagles are doing. I don't know. It's interesting, man. This time of year is always wild. Either way, Marcus Mosher, Locked On Cowboys. You guys are be covering playoff football this time next week. Locked On Commanders. You guys know what it is. We're already talking head coach, GM searches, draft stuff. We're going to continue doing this. Going to go into overdrive starting next week. But we do have this game, so thank you for everybody who did come over for this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders, everydayers. We appreciate your support through all of the ups and downs an NFL season brings to fans mostly. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So make sure you go to Locked On Sports today and get your 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories. Go to YouTube, subscribe to that channel right now, or just stick right here and we'll send you over as soon as we're done. Coming up, Marcus and I each have another episode dropping before this game kicks off on Sunday. So make sure you come back for that as always. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, your first view today and every day. For Marcus Mosher, I'm David Harris. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind. We'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Commanders, both of us part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.